Hello, today is Sunday, the 24th of April, year 2022. My name is Alejandro Renteria. I'm interviewing Marco Antonio Chapa for the South Texas Archives at the Texas A&M University Kingsville. This is part of the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History Project in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Chapa, that this recorded interview will be placed in the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University Kingsville and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, especially given that your recordings may appear online, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something that you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 4 questions that we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. The South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University Kingsville wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University Kingsville. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University Kingsville. Here's the first question. Do you give us consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University Kingsville?
Yes.
Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at the Texas A&M University Kingsville copyright over the interview and any other materials you provide?
Yes.
Do you agree to allow South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University Kingsville to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
4th question. Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at the Texas A&M University Kingsville consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of Pandemic Oral History Project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes.
I'm sorry, those questions are really long. We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voices server at the University of Texas at Austin. The final storing of the pre-interview form will be at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University Kingsville. We will have stripped out any contact information for yourself or your family members so that will not be a part of your public file. 5th question, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in public file available to researchers at South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University Kingsville?
Yes.
Last question. Last question for the preamble. I'm sorry. On occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your emails with journalists?
Yes.
You can say no to that one if you're unsure.
No.
Okay. Let's start. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself, just like your experience with COVID-19 or just you.
About me, I'm 51 years old. I was born in Alice, Texas. I was raised in San Diego, Texas. I graduated salutatorian from my high school class. I joined the military. I served in the Army for 2 years during the Gulf War. I went to school, became an LVN, and I was an LVN for like maybe 15 years. And then I upgraded my degree and became an RN. I've been an RN for 7 years. Um, I work with dialysis patients at Laredo Medical Center. What else would you like to know?
Well, as much as you're comfortable sharing, really. But okay, what have your experiences with COVID-19 been like? Like, where did you find out about it, if you remember?
It was March 16th, 2020. That's when the first case, the confirmed case, hit Laredo. And then it just exploded from there. And then in the latter part of March, early part of April, I got sick. It was not a confirmed case of COVID. However, at that time, nobody really knew what was going on because it was really novel. It was new. There was no testing, no testing kits the way there is today. Basically just a quarantine, the 14 days, and then just write out the symptoms. And that, even though it was not a confirmed case, because I don't know if I had it or not, the sickest I've ever been, I could probably say, in my entire life. So initially, it's like I feel like I was one of the very first people who was infected here in Laredo, but not confirmed. After that, returning back to work, I was basically out from the beginning of April to April 21st. So I was out 3 weeks from work. And when I went back, it was like total chaos at the hospital. You know, it's like I go in, find out that over 100 nurses were infected with COVID, you know, because nobody really knew how to work with it. Nobody knew how it transmitted, you know, or whatnot. And then it just total chaos ensued from then forth. I mean, we worked 6 days a week, 65, 70 hours a week for practically the whole year, you know. So it was rough. I mean, seeing patients, you know, patients that you saw before, and the next thing you know, they come in, they got COVID. And you know that at that point, probably about 70% of them did not pull through, did not make it. And you see them, you see their scared look, it's like telling me, I don't want to die. And there's nothing you really can do about it, you know, because this was something that was entirely new, and we were rolling with the punches. And unfortunately, COVID kicked our butt big time, you know, but eventually, like everything, you know, we overcame it. And even though it's still around, it's not as deadly as it is now, as it was then. You know, hundreds, thousands of people are getting infected, but not dying.
Thank you. That's a lot to take in. You mentioned March 16th being the first day you found out about the virus. That's on your daughter's birthday, correct?
Yes.
So were you with her when you found out about the virus?
No, we were actually at well, she's in Kingsville, and well, right there, she's going to school. So she was there. We were actually at the lake with some friends, and that's when the first confirmed case came out on, I believe it was Facebook, maybe, or on the news that we saw, and that was the first confirmed case, and it was like, it got real, you know.
Did you
It got
realize it was going to be as serious as it got?
Honestly, I thought, in my personal opinion, it was gonna be gone in a couple of weeks. You know, that it wasn't gonna be bad. You know, I figured maybe 200, 250 cases total that would crop up. And here we are 2 years later, and we've had 90 some thousand cases. So yeah, my estimate was totally off.
So when did you realize that your estimate was just really not?
After about a week, when the cases kept increasing and increasing and increasing, and it's like, wow, we already hit 250, and that was my guess, and that was just like a week later, So, and then it just in the summer, it just like this huge wave, came, and thousands of people. And at the hospital, there was shortage of supplies, shortage of staff. And that made everything difficult. Luckily for us, we were able to secure some state nurses, but only for the hospital, not for our unit with our company, because we were contracted with the hospital at that point. And everybody else got help except the dialysis unit. We were never short of supplies in dialysis. However, we were short of staff. There was 4 of us working because we had one nurse quit the moment COVID came in. It's like, no, I'm not gonna risk myself. And we had another nurse who had gone home to the Philippines to pick up her son to bring him back, and then they shut down travel. So she was stuck over there for about another 3 months. So for 3 months initially, there was 4 of us working. So we had no choice but to tighten the belt and keep on going. And luckily for us, nobody got sick.
That's really
all
good
the
to
other,
hear.
yep. All the other units, they had people that would come get sick and all, but then they had all these state nurses, which at that point, it was very much appreciated. However, at that point, I think the hospital just kept admitting everybody who had COVID. So the whole 3rd floor of the hospital, all 3 units were all COVID. And a lot of them needed it. Some, in my opinion, did not. They could have gone and convalesced at home and recuperated at home. But I don't know. There's a lot of things that one can speculate. It's like, got free staff. Let's bring in all this extra patients. Because the staff was paid by the state. It was not paid by the hospital. That's one speculation. Or maybe perhaps they really did need it, and since it was so new, they didn't want to take any chances.
So do you have any ideas on what you would have chosen to do better at the hospital? Like what you think would have benefited the staff as well as the patients more?
Well, initially, they were rotating staff to the COVID units. It's like, oh, you're going to go work in the COVID unit today, and then the next day you're going to go work on the regular floor. There's an increase of cross-contamination right there. And that, in my opinion, happened quite a bit. Had things done different, the set number of nurses assigned to the COVID unit, and that was it. They are going to work exclusively in the COVID unit. That way there's no risk of cross-contaminating the other floors. And not until we got the state help did that happen. The state nurses were all exclusively in the COVID units, and all the LMC employees were basically in the other floors, and not going into the COVID unit. But as time went on, everything was very strict. You went into the COVID unit, you did not come out. The hospital provided your meals. You were there the whole time in the unit. Yes, they had some clean areas where you could enjoy, sit down, have your meal with like maybe 2 or 3 people in the break room, and that was it. You couldn't go to pharmacy. You couldn't go anywhere else. They had runners to go pick up supplies that you needed and take them to the unit and so forth. But as time wore on, they relaxed all of that. And then next thing you know, you have COVID nurses going to to the pharmacy. You have COVID nurses going to the cafeteria. I mean, walking all over the hospital. And what does that do? That increases the risk of cross-contamination. So that's one thing that would have been done different, be a little bit more strict on that. But since it was new, we did what the best that we thought we could do. And it worked. It worked because eventually, we nipped it. And though it's still around, it's not as deadly as it was back in 2020.
So given the information available to you at the time, you think that y'all did the best you could and
I think we did. We did the best that we could because that's all we knew what to do. And as time wore on, you got a better understanding of how the virus transmitted to other people. It was not so much like the surface area before. It's like you couldn't touch anything, but that transmission part of the equation turned out to be a little off. It was mostly respiratory, airborne droplets. And as time wore on, we had a better understanding. So yes, we had better practices to be able to overcome it.
Well, that's good to hear. Let's shift the conversation to what it was, what you observed from your family. How did it affect your children, your family members, those that live in the U.S. or not, or your community as a whole, your neighbors? How did you see them being affected?
Well, initially, there was a lot of stress because being stuck at home, because there was mandates where you couldn't go out in the community. So you were stuck at home for basically half the year. So that put a lot of stress on everyone. It's like, yes, I would go off to work every single day for 6 days a week, but everyone else was stuck at home. And it's not boredom. It's a combination of boredom and lack of social interaction. So that created a lot of families came together. Yes. But some families actually, they couldn't handle the stress. As far as like the community being open, yes, the stores were open, but everything was like, you had to wear a mask, you had to go in, is limited number, you had to wait in line to be able to go in. So it's, for the most part, the community responded very well. Of course, now as time wore on, you had those who, they don't want to be told what to do. It's not being told what to do. See, it's like, I'm free. I have the right to not wear a mask. That's my freedom here. The mask was your freedom because it allowed you to be out there going wherever you wanted. But people just don't see it that way.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you brought up the grocery stores. I remember there being shortages of everything, really. Were y'all affected in any way by that?
No, we were the ones, we actually got to get toilet paper, which I have no idea why toilet paper was such a big thing. And there was a shortage of it. People would actually go wait in line waiting to buy toilet paper. And as far as shortages, I think we're fairly stocked here. We didn't really have that big a shortage, but I know other places they did. But here we were fortunate enough that we needed something, it was usually available. The stores here did a marvelous job of keeping the shelf stocked.
When compared to before COVID, pre-COVID, how, if at all, has COVID impacted your ability to gather as, friends and family? You said it brought along stress. Did humans being social creatures, did it affect the way you viewed social interaction from there on after?
Yeah, I mean, you were hesitant to shake somebody's hand. That's how extreme it got. And it's like hi, just waving. It's like stand 6 feet away. It's like, yeah, of course. You might gather around, whereas before you were in a little group, right now you were spread out over a big semicircle of, where everyone's spread out, not wanting to get close. And anywhere you hear somebody cough, and it's like you turn around, it's like, oh, it created that paranoia. Everyone who had a cough had COVID. So it, yeah, in my opinion, it affected social interactions. I mean, to this day, it still does. You're wary of, it's like who's coming into your house. You know, do they have any respiratory illness or whatnot? So yeah, social interaction was and still is being affected.
Having children, did it affect the way that they got their education, how they got their source of information?
Yeah, they had to do the distance learning from home for the whole 2020. I mean, they went to 2020, spring break came around, and they never went back to school. And a whole nother year. So they did remote learning. So yeah, that social interaction was eliminated from them, and kids need social interaction. And you as a parent, yeah, you didn't want to send them back to school because of the risk. But eventually everything calms down, and yes, life, goes on. It overcomes, it adapts. It's like never in my wildest dreams did I think I was gonna have to be wearing a mask, on the community. I do wear a mask at work, but now when you don't wear it, it's like you feel something's missing. Even though you see all these people not wearing masks, you feel like, hey, it's to each his own.
Do you think that you mentioned your son going to school remotely? Do you think that the school did a good job at providing for those that didn't have like computers, or did they respond to giving out food to like communities?
Yeah, they did, because those that didn't have computers, they loaned a Chromebook, to every single student. And those that didn't have internet, the school districts will park buses out in the community which had Wi-Fi. So everyone would have access to the necessities to be able to go to school. As for food, yeah, you could drive by the schools and pick up food. They would hand them out your breakfast and your lunch. Because not everybody, some people, they depend on that, and it was provided. So they did a good job, I think.
Did you get your vaccination? Are you vaccinated?
I am. I initially did not get vaccinated, not because I'm an anti-vaxxer, because it was something that was so new. And vaccines that I know of took years and years and years to develop. But then you get to reading into it and all that, and you see these vaccines that took years and years to develop were not developed with the technology that we have today. So yes, you can develop a vaccine in a record time, which they did. And I believe it was effective in stopping this waves and waves and waves of infections. So I
Many
waited
people,
6 months.
wow, 6 months.
Yeah.
Many people did end up getting after effects from the viruses, like, fevers. Did you have any symptoms after getting vaccinated?
Actually, I did not have any side effects, any symptoms whatsoever. The only effect I had was a little bit of soreness in the arm when the injection was made. But other than that, nothing.
Since you work in the healthcare industry, I'm not gonna ask you. I know you've elaborated before, but have you had any concerns or questions about what healthcare is gonna look like as a result of COVID? Have you had to change healthcare or any insurance plans?
Insurance plans, no. Policies, how you deal with patients, yes. Every patient that comes into the hospital now has to have a COVID test done on them. You do wear a mask. You assume that everyone's positive until you get a negative test result. It's really, you're doing it to protect yourself and protect other patients. But as far as like insurance, no, I'm not too detailed into that. So I'm not sure that there would have to be any differences, any in care that they provide or reimbursements or whatnot. But as far as the actual care of the patient, yes, things did change.
Um, Now are you boosted? How many vaccines have you had?
I've had 3.
Did you hesitate for any of them for any reason?
No. After the first one, when I was eligible for the second one, I got it, and then as soon as I was eligible for the booster, I got it. Because it does work. You're talking 95% immunity efficacy from the vaccine. I mean, why would you risk the vaccine? Yes, for most people that got infected, it was mild. But then there's those millions and millions of people that are no longer around. And a lot of them are actually people who, hey, I'm not going to get the vaccine. You can't tell me to get the vaccine. It's everyone has their own personal preference.
So when it comes to people, not wanting to, do you think that politics has anything to do with that? You think the virus was more politicized than it probably should have been?
I think that and social media has a lot to do with that. You got all these people, all these influencers who spewing out, false facts. And people tend to, they're influencers for a reason. They're influential. And politics, yes, had a lot to do with that. The disparity in the party lines was amazing. One party for and one party against. So each individual has to make their own informed decision and do what is they feel is right. Not based on what somebody else is telling you.
So the pandemic hit in the year 2020, and that's when the presidential election was going on. Do you believe that COVID impacted national politics, state politics, and local politics? If so, would you like to explain?
I think the way it affected it is the way they work through rallies and social interaction with the people. That was non-existent. So that affected that big time. A lot of the things were had to done remote. It's like you're talking and then or like the Democrats did, it's like you stay in your cars. You have big rallies where you're talking and people are in their cars. So I think it affected the politics in that way.
You said you were out of work for 3 weeks when the pandemic started.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little? Like how did it lead to you not being able to go to work after being an
Well,
RN?
what happened is back then we had time off because we didn't have an influx of patients. So I had a 5-day weekend coming up, and I got sick at the beginning of those 5 days. So then when it was time for me to go back to work, there was no way I could go back to work. I visited the doctor, and they didn't have tests for COVID. I was tested for flu, I was tested for strep, all were negative, yet I had all these symptoms. Yes. So I was given a quarantine at home 14 days and to return to the physician or ER if symptoms worsen. Luckily, I was able to get better within those 14 days. Not 100%, I returned back to work because at that point, to return back to work, I needed to have a negative test result. So somehow the company that I work with, Fresenius, they were able to secure that test and it came out negative. So that's not to say I didn't have it, because 14 days at that point was enough to overcome it and test negative. So I returned back to work, but I was not 100%. I would probably say I was like 70%. I still had a cough, very slight shortness of breath. So I returned and they did not stick me in the COVID unit for about another month. So that's where the company did good, in my opinion, because they allowed me to work with the non-infected patients, until I was 100%.
It's good to see companies, take initiative and do that for their employees. Did you lose any, did you or anyone in your family lose, money, or did they have troubles financially due to the pandemic?
No. Healthcare was one industry that flourished. It's like, not to say that I profited from it, because I didn't, because we worked all those hours because we needed to help all those patients. But in working all those hours, yes, I made more money than I had ever made in any year prior to that. And more, I'm talking about $60,000 more. So in healthcare, yes, healthcare flourished. But other industries, yes, like the restaurant industry, they had a lot of hard times, but not us.
I know you've been talking about how your roles in the hospital have had to change depending, on your health or um where they needed staff. How drastic have the changes in your duties? No, how much have they changed with the 2-year span that is the pandemic?
The one drastic change is the constant wearing of the masks. But they're doing it for your protection and for the protection of the patients that you're taking care of. It's like you wear the mask to protect others, not to protect yourself. They wear the mask to protect you. And that's the one big change that has happened. And secluded units, COVID units, they do not come out of the unit until they have negative test results or as new standards have come up with 10 days of quarantine or 14 days of quarantine, they're presumed non-contagious anymore. So yeah, at that point, they can come into the general population of the hospital. Those are the changes that were implemented because of COVID. Every patient coming into the emergency room or for outpatient procedures or whatnot, they all have to have a COVID test. And they all have to have a negative COVID test results to be able to continue through the process. Or they go to a COVID unit.
There was a lot of social issues going on while the pandemic started. And I remember getting some of your thoughts about rallying and how people in crowds for causes isn't always the best idea. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Can you say that again?
Well, with a lot of social issues where in 2020, 2021, and 2022, you know how there was rallies, there was protests out on the streets.
Oh yeah.
Did you have any thoughts on whether it be bad or good for infection of the COVID-19?
Yeah, well, COVID-19 is a respiratory infection, and then now you've got all these thousands of people out, rallying, protesting. They're not sitting there quiet. They're sitting there yelling, screaming, in close contact with thousands of other people. So what does that do? That increases your chance of infection, even though it's outdoors, but you're in an enclosed area per se, because you're surrounded by thousands of people. And when you're yelling, you're spewing out more droplets, more, air, and that's where the virus is. And your exhaust per se, that your cough, your sneezes, just talking puts out micro droplets full of viruses. That's why they say it's 6 feet. 6 feet for the talking part, because it can't travel that far. However, a sneeze, you can travel 20 feet in a sneeze, So, and then screaming and yelling, when people yell, they usually spewing out droplets. So yes, the risk of infection was magnified.
2 years removed, have your perspectives on going out changed, like evolved since the very beginning of the pandemic to now?
It's a little bit more relaxed. Initially, yes, you didn't want to go nowhere. I remember the first time we went to a hospital, not to a hospital, to a restaurant. It was nerve-wracking. It's like we sat in the furthest corner away from everybody, but eventually everything, you relax and everything seems to be going back to normal. But yeah, initially it was nerve-wracking.
Have you participated in any of the rallies or any of the social movements going on?
No.
They just don't interest you.
No. I do my thing in the background. It's like all these people, anti-vaxxers, I encourage vaccination to anyone I come across. Anyone who's anti-vaccine, I give them the facts. They can make their informed decision whether to get it or not get it. That is their choice. I'm not telling them to get it. I'm just informing them of the benefits and the benefits of receiving it or the risk of not receiving it.
So as a nurse, were you required by your job to get the vaccination, or it was just out of your own will to get vaccinated?
When I got vaccinated, it was out of my own free will. They were not requiring it. But a year later, yes, they mandated it. So people had to get the vaccine if they wanted to continue working. Initially, they said, no, if you don't get the vaccine, you're going to get tested weekly. So some people chose to get tested weekly. But then eventually, as time wore on, they mandated the vaccine. So you had to get the vaccine if you wanted to continue your employment.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Did it make you feel any type of way about having to have the vaccine?
No, because we work in an industry where, we're on the front line. You're in the hospital, people coming in sick. You're in one of the frontline workers. You want to be protected. And they're just, in my opinion, they're just trying to protect you. I know it's a freedom of choice, but I'm not against mandating the vaccine.
A lot of people had issues getting access to vaccination spots. Did you have any trouble at all in that regard?
No, I didn't. Well, here in Laredo, there was basically you could go anywhere and get it. But initially, by the time I got it, you could go anywhere and get it. But initially, yes. There would be a posting that they're going to be vaccinating over here on this side, and then everybody would rush that way, to go get it. But by the time I got it 6 months into the vaccine, yes, it was widely available. So I had no problems scheduling an appointment to get my vaccine.
At any point, did you feel that people were taking the vaccine too serious?
Serious as in?
I misspoke. I'm sorry. I didn't mean the vaccine. I meant the virus.
A lot of people were downplaying the virus. It's like, oh, it's a hoax. It's like, no, it's nothing. It's just a common cold. And of course, you're one of them initially because you have no idea what it does. It's like I said, I figured, in about 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to be out of it. Doesn't mean I was downplaying it, but I just, figured it would be like that. It actually was way worse than what I anticipated it. Thousands, millions of people later that are no longer with us will agree with that.
Have you or any of your family members contracted the virus?
Yeah, several of them. Not my immediate family, but my extended family, like my brothers, my sister, my mother. They all contracted the virus. They live in a different community, a smaller community, which is strange that they would have contracted it, because here, there's a lot of people. So, and in a border town, so, but yeah, they did contract the virus, but everyone had mild infections and they pulled through. And my daughter also contracted the virus. She's actually at the same university where you're at, but she had a very mild infection. So
you never want to, have any of your family's health in doubt. Well, this should be the end of it. Thank you for your time. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your experiences, anything that I just might have missed or not asked?
just wear a mask. Wear a mask. When in doubt, wear a mask. Protect yourself, protect others. That's the one thing you can do. It's a choice. Make that choice. Wear a mask.
Thank you for your time.
All right.